coaches, let's talk about how to coach through pressure situations. I actually got this question from another coach around like, how do you keep your team calm and focused in doing their jobs when they are losing a lead or the other team starts to creep back, the momentum is starting to swing, or in like these bigger championship games, playoff games where there's already a lot of noise happening. And I've been in more than I can count as a coach. There's been times where my team does not show up and perform because they got rattled and they blew the lead. And then there are times like in this past state championship match where they were equipped with the tools and I was able to navigate that, but not without some bumps in the road. So I'm going to talk about some sports psychology tips and tricks that you could be using with your team to help you in those situations. If I haven't met you, I'm Coach Bre. I'm a mental performance coach for girl athletes, but I'm also a 4-time state champ coach. I've been coaching for 14 years. So like I said, I've been in these situations a lot. And it's not like it gets easier, but there are things that can help. So, number one, I like to think of this as like there's in the moment strategies versus out of the moment strategies. So, I'm going to first talk about like in the moment strategies, which aren't as effective, I will say, as first like some out of moment strategies. But I'm going to start there just because we're like, well, what do we do as coaches? In those moments when your team is panicking, or maybe you're panicking as a coach, this maybe goes without saying, but you have to show up with the presence that you want your team to emulate. So you want to think of yourself like the flight attendant. If you have ever heard of this analogy, I hear a lot in the parenting world, but when the plane that starts to experience some turbulence and you look to the flight attendant, you kind of like, is this an emergency or is just this normal? And typically the flight attendants can like show on their face and in their body language if this is an emergency or not. And if you're like, well, the flight attendants look like they're cool, so everything's good, you can stay calm. And the same thing happens when your team starts to experience some of this turbulence in a game. They're looking to you. They're like, is this an emergency? Is this a problem? Or like, are we going to get through this? And so if you can be that like calm, cool, collected coach, I'm not saying that you don't need to, like, you can't be passionate and things like this, but if you start to freak out, you start to flip your lid, lose your cool, like your team is going to follow that and they're going to start panicking too. So in the moment, the best that you can, like stay calm, composed, focused. I like to have a little plan for myself. If I'm like, if we get in a rut, we let a run of 3 or 4 points happen on us. I like to like literally I write things down ahead of time of what I can do in those moments. So I coach volleyball, but it's like I can make a sub, I can change serve receive, I can call a timeout. Like I honestly have to have a little cheat sheet because I get a little flustered in the moment too. So that helps me. So maybe that can help you. As far as it goes with your players, making sure that what you're saying is focused in like positive present tense. We're not focusing on the outcome. We're not focusing on like, don't do this or don't do that or what are you doing? Instead, like give this constructive, here's what we're going to do next play. So that type of language can really help to kind of ground them, give them something to focus on, not overcoach them, things like that in the moment. So, like I said, though, your in the moment strategies are really going to be useless if you don't have some things kind of worked out ahead of time. So, what I mean by that is out of the moment strategies means that you're preparing your team for the moment that they're going to be in. And as a coach myself, like I spent way too long not preparing my team for these pressure situations, and it was evident in how we showed up. I had talented teams that, should go far in postseason, and then we would end up losing in these like winner to state, loser out matches because we just crumbled under the pressure. Not because we couldn't physically do it. Like we were clearly talented, but we just didn't know how to handle the moment. And I had to look at myself as a coach and realize like there's gaps in my coaching that is not addressing this. And I needed to stop expecting my team to show up mentally tough when I hadn't taught them the skills to do that and expecting like someone else to teach them, like parents, teachers, whatever, like someone else teach them how to be mentally tough when I had to point the finger at myself and realize like, well, I need to be giving some skills for this. And also, if you're like me as a coach, I like to know where to start. I felt like I didn't have any time. And so I took the hard path and I became certified as a mental performance coach. I started teaching skills to my team, started getting a lot of success with it. But you don't have to do that. I actually like made it easy for you. So I'm going to go over a couple of things right now that you can be doing to prepare your team. But if you want to know like the full breakdown, I do that over at our free training. It's at coachbretraining.com. So head there and I break down like everything in more detail. I talk about like a really simple way that you can do this with your team through our plug and play system. So anyways, coachfreetraining.com. But the first thing that really helps kind of prepare your team for these moments is to do it in practice. Like, as much as possible, you're not gonna be able to totally emulate, like, what a state championship will look like in practice, but having been a part of 4 state championships in the past 4 seasons, there are common situations that your team is going to get into in those big games that you can train in practice. So things like setting the score to a deficit or flipping the score kind of like mid-game, putting some consequences on the game. Now, I'm not a huge fan of, like, exercise as punishment, but you can come up with other I do it in moderation, but, like, you can come up with other things that kind of add some pressure. We do a competitive cauldron, and if you're considering that for your team, if you know what that is, it has to be introduced, especially with girls, like, in a very intentional way because it ranks players and people get points, and that really breeds a little competition in our gym. But as everything is scored, everything is a competition for the most part. And that really helps kind of add in what that feels like because in a game, it's everything is scored and everything is a competition. So making sure that you're doing those elements in practice and that it's high energy and it's structured and, there's winners and losers. So that's how we can like train for those moments. But also you can pinpoint like specific situations, like we're down by 3 and you have to win the next point, things like that. So you can emulate some of that pressure. The other thing that is really important is for those moments is to identify them. Like we actually sit down, especially as we head into postseason, and we're like, what situations are going to throw us off? What situations are we going to be in that and you can't plan for everything. That's why it's important that you instill in your athletes the belief that they are adaptable and they can meet any moment, things like that. But there are some common ones. So it's very common, especially in volleyball, for us to get down by a few points. And so we have to have a plan for that. So we come up with a plan of what we're going to do, some options, and then we visualize it. So we do something before practice every day called 3-2-1 braid. It's like a simple daily mindset routine that incorporates visualization, incorporates some breath work so that they know how to ground themselves and they have like some self-regulation techniques that they can also use in those moments. We also infuse some affirmations so that they have some good self-talk to fall back on. So all of that is really good to make sure that they have a plan for those moments and that they visualize them ahead of time. So we actually visualize ourselves like being down by a few points and kind of like as much as possible recreating that feeling of panic. So like, ooh, and then seeing ourselves like, here, we're gonna take a deep breath. We're going to maybe adjust our serve receive. We're going to pass this next ball a 3. So like, it's not a guarantee that that's what's going to happen, but we're doing our best to prepare for what could happen. And like I said, you can't plan for every single moment. You can't like come up with like all of the 86 things that could go wrong in a game, but you can plan for some of the common ones and you can plan for, the fact that things are going to go sideways. And so we almost like not only anticipate that, but look for it in a way. We're like, okay, we're here. It's going sideways. Like, all right, we're adaptable. We can do, so it's like we're addressing the elephant in the room before it happens. So that is really good. I will say that having also like a failure recovery method, we call ours the snapback routine, is essential in this last state championship. So it was a tight game. It was back and forth. The other team was really good. The fact that we even got to this match was impressive for our team last year. And then to come up against this team that was like physically big, hadn't lost a game pretty much all season. I think they only lost like one set, maybe. Like they were physically dominant and we were kind of going back and forth. It was tight in the 4th set. We were like down a couple of sets at that point. So meaning the other team was about to win state. We were in those like really tight pressure situations. My team was able to meet the moment. They were able to come back from championship point. They were battling back. We won the 4th set in like this epic way where our mental game was strong. The other team kind of crumbled mentally. And then we won the 5th set and it was phenomenal. And my players were interviewed obviously afterwards. And, they were asked, what was going through your head when you were in that situation, when you were down championship point? And they said things like, I was just doing my snapback routine. I think one of them said, I was doing my breath, I was saying my reset word, doing my breath, saying my reset word, which is the snapback routine. It's a combination of a breath, a reset word, and a reset signal. And so we were, making sure that athletes had trained that the whole season. And it really didn't help us. I mean, it helped, but it wasn't obvious until that pressure situation, until that moment where it was like, oh, okay, I don't know what else to do. I'm super nervous. So I'm going to do my breath and say my reset word. And that is what kind of held us in that moment and allowed us to stay mentally tough. So it's really important that athletes have some sort of failure recovery method, like a snapback routine. All my athletes have their own. I don't know all the reset words. I don't know all the reset signals, but we do have now a shared common language. So I can say, do your reset word, or I can say, do your snapback routine. We did that a couple times, like in the timeouts in those pressure situations, and they know what to do. and they have the skills to regulate themselves. So that's really, really important. So training for high pressure situations, visualizing some of those things ahead of time, having a failure recovery system, all of those things can actually be done in practice. And there's 3 things that I do every single day in practice to train the mental side of the game that incorporates these things. And if you want to check out exactly what those 3 things are, I go over that in this next video. So 3 simple things that you can add to your practice as well. So check out that next video. I'll see you there.